the Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. In episode 95, Cassandra Lambert talks to us about the importance of healing at the nervous system level.
I found my way towards finally having a daughter, which was like an answered prayer. And from that point, having her, I thought I had done a lot of healing work, but when I had her, all the things that I thought I had healed kind of came to the surface, and it was like starting all over again, kind of like a trauma capsule reopening. And it kind of led me on this path towards like rekindling a relationship with a higher power. There was a lot of anger and resentment there. And then it led me to the somatic work, and also being an artist for 10 years, which also led to the somatic work. So it was like this trajectory, right? It wasn't a smooth path. I know for a long time I didn't want to live. But at the same time, I also knew like, well, if I am supposed to be here, let it, and I was supposed to go through all these like awful things, let it be purposeful. Let me help someone else like in similar dark situations.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello, and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast, the space where stories of strength, resilience, and transformation unfold. I'm your host, Rose Davidson, and I'm honoured to be your guide on this journey of empowerment and healing. Today, we have a very special episode tailored just for you. Whether you're driving, you're sipping your cup of tea, or simply taking a moment for yourself, I want you to know that you are in a safe space. Healing Through Love is more than a podcast. It's a community, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that you are not alone. In this episode, we have a guest who will share a story that resonates with the core of our mission, a story that illuminates the power of love, resilience, and the unwavering strength that lies within each of us. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let the healing journey begin. Before we dive into today's conversation, just a quick reminder for you all. If you find value in our episodes, consider supporting us by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your engagement helps us to reach more hearts and spread the message of healing. Today, my guest is Cassandra Lambert, and Cassandra's going to be discussing with us the importance of healing at the nervous system level. Cassandra is the owner and founder of C-Love and is a trauma-trained somatic coach and practitioner. She's fully certified in clinical EFT, Brainspotting, and Somatic Attachment Therapy. She is a dedicated guide for individuals on a journey towards self-love and personal wholeness. Her transformative path, driven by her own experiences with complex PTSD from sexual abuse, led her to the profound impact of somatic-based work, particularly emotional freedom techniques. With the mission to empower others, Cassandra offers a 10-week pain into power process using EFT as a primary modality. Through this, she helps clients unlock their innate divine power and achieve lasting change, freeing them to embrace their true potential. Cassandra, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Healing Through Love podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really love everything you're saying as you're doing your introduction. It's so soothing. It feels good.
Thank you. Thank you. So tell me a little bit about, if you would like to share your journey from where you were to what brought you to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so it's a really long journey, and not a very clear path. When I was a kid, I went through a lot of trauma and abuse. My mom left my dad before I was even born because he was an alcoholic, and he would play games with her, like hiding her car so she couldn't find her car to go to work and weird things like that. So she left him before I was born. And then it was just me and her. And then she got with this other man and had another daughter with him, but he was also an alcoholic and abusive when he was drunk. And obviously, I was too little, I was two. I don't remember exactly what happened. I just remember I would get nightmares, and I have photographs. So in that point in time, I ended up in a foster family, because that guy's mom called Child Protective Services on my mom. And so she was trying to get me back, and then they took that other sister, and my mom couldn't fight for both of us. So she got me back, thankfully. But yeah, so I went through some kind of turmoil at two. Fast forward, my mom got with another man when I was around the age of four. And we were with him for a while from the time I was 4 to 8. And they had a daughter. So I have another sister, and she's been a part of my life. But this man actually was the one that sexually abused me. And it didn't start until I was 5, when he had lost his job. And then my mom was going to work and he was at home with us. And then from there, my mom finally, like, we got away from him, luckily, which was hard, because the whole child custody stuff with my sister. And she ended up with someone she knew since like childhood. And then that was the most normal of a family life we had for a while. But you fast forward in my teens, they were really confusing. Me and my mom didn't get along. Sometimes it felt like she was competing for my boyfriends, because she would like come around and like negligee or talk about uncomfortable conversations revolving around sex. Um, or she would tell me to come in the room with porn on the television, and knowing it would like evoke certain feelings in me from being abused as a child, and tell me to just get over it. So my teenage years were really confusing, really emotional. Um, and I think it catapulted me to, in my 20s, just being in and out of a lot of abusive relationships with men. Um, One of them was so bad that like he would be like cussing at me in the streets. He would throw me on the ground. He would call me like really awful names, just because he said I was looking at people. And there was one time he actually broke my thumb. Uh, and luckily I did get away from this person. Obviously it didn't start off that way, right? Like the thing with abuse is it doesn't like start off with them like punching you in the face. It's like little by little, it gets just really toxic and unhealthy, and it is really like an addiction, right? But yeah, I was like in and out of these abusive relationships, and also having like a lot of panic attacks, anxiety. And I remember back then like seeing infomercials with there was one that came on around like anxiety or this and that. And I still actually have some of the CDs from that, even though I never really like looked at them. And then the other infomercial that came on back then was Tony Robbins. And kind of planted little seeds, you know. Um, and I was always drawn to towards entrepreneurship, right? Like I didn't like the idea of like having to sit at a job, like especially if it was like super boring or whatever. Like, you know, when no customers are there, like what am I supposed to do with my time? So it led me into like personal development and acting classes, and little by little, um, I found my way towards finally having a daughter, which was like an answered prayer. And from that point, having her, I thought I had done a lot of healing work, but when I had her, all the things that I thought I had healed kind of came to the surface, and it was like starting all over again, kind of like a trauma capsule reopening. Um, and it kind of led me on this path towards like rekindling a relationship with a higher power. There was a lot of anger and resentment there. And then it led me to the somatic work, and also being an artist for 10 years, which also led to the somatic work. So it it was like this trajectory, right? It wasn't a smooth path. I know for a long time I didn't want to live. But at the same time, I also knew like, well, if I am supposed to be here, let it, and I was supposed to go through all these like awful things, let it be purposeful. Let me help someone else like in similar dark situations.
Wow, that's really sad. Really, it's quite a sad way to start your life and to continue on your life. I know that you know, if you grow up in an abusive environment, quite often you continue that by getting into your own abusive relationships because that's what you know. You don't know any
Yep.
different. Tell me a little bit about your EFT system, emotional freedom techniques. Tell me a little bit about
Mhm.
those and how they can be used to overcome trauma.
Yeah. So I might have to get a cough drop, so sorry.
Okay.
So I actually love EFT for a few reasons. One is because you can use it as a day-to-day practice to help support your nervous system. So it's not only for when you go see a practitioner, right? But you can also use it day-to-day, which is really empowering. So it's great for self-soothing, it's great for self-regulating. It's also great to just remind your body that you're allowed to feel relaxed, right? And there's a few components about it that are really beautiful. It's like a concoction of multiple modalities like acupressure, like you're using acupressure points. It's also a little bit of exposure therapy, right? Because you're exposing yourself to the activation. Also, it has a little bit of neurolinguistic programming in there because of reframing. And then what it does essentially is when you're doing your tapping, right? It cuts off the signal to your fight or flight part of your brain, the amygdala. So then that part of your brain stops pumping your body full of cortisol, which is what gets people so amped up. So that stops. And then also it kicks on your vagus nerve. So it allows for more relaxation. So you're essentially shifting the chemicals in your body and causing for more relaxation. And the more you do it too, especially working with a practitioner where you can get to roots of things, you'll find that your reactions towards things start to reduce naturally, right? So it's a really great way of moving through emotions, moving through trauma. They have gentle techniques, which are perfect for trauma. So you go through nice and slow, so you're not re-traumatizing the system. And yeah, I found it super helpful for my own trauma where other things weren't able to quite get in there. EFT was able to get in there and in a gentle way.
Mm. Yeah, so that's the one where you tap on your head and you tap under your
Hmm.
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a technique that I have looked at, but not necessarily practice on a regular basis. But so for those of us who are I guess not skeptical, but
Hmm.
uh, don't use it on a regular basis, what are the benefits of using it every day?
Yeah. So, well, one thing, it helps your system feel more at ease. So let's say like when a curveball comes along, you're more in your body and grounded and centered. So you're more able to respond to that curveball versus go straight to reaction, right? It's kind of like filling your piggy bank with some like feel good relaxation there. I That's also why I always recommend like having a daily practice where you are filling your cup too and really focusing on getting to your center, because that way you're more responsive to life and less reactive. It's also really great because it reduces stress in the body, anxiety in the body. And when you reduce stress and anxiety in the body, it boosts your immunity. So then you have more better health. And it just helps with so many factors. You can use it on physical pain, like literally if you hurt yourself, you can use it on that. You can use it for stress, anxiety. You can use it for emotions, thoughts, negative cognitions. Like you can use it for everything, really. And what they find too, and what I've seen and experienced, is if you do get like a physical pain, right? And you do tapping on all the different aspects, like let's say the pain originally was like an 8 or 9 and like, oh, it was hurting so bad. And then you do the tapping, you'll end up having it at like a 2 or 3, super more manageable because of all the emotions wrapped around the injury or whatever happened.
So is it advisable to, go to somebody like yourself to learn how to do it, or can you just do it on the internet, or and what are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Because a lot of like some people have tried tapping in the past, and they were like, oh, it didn't work, right? And I was like, well, how were you doing it, right? And they're usually like, yeah, I found some videos on YouTube or this and that. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, whenever you see like those videos on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, they're more catered to like doing like general tabletop tapping, right? Because they're not working with a very specific person and working with their specific aspects. So it's going to be very general. So it'll be more like, a nice fresh cup of coffee, it feels good in the moment, but it's not necessarily doing the deeper work of getting to the roots. And so like if you want to learn how to go dive deeper, you could either take a class or you could work with a practitioner. And as you're working with a practitioner, you're also learning how to do it in a more deep way.
Good idea. I mean, like, I've only learned from the internet, and to me it hasn't personally done anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm not doing it in a way that's helpful for me, and something that's not catering to my stuff. What can you Cassandra, can you explain what what somatic work is?
Yeah, somatic work is just working with the body and like how we store things in our body. And a lot of trauma gets stored in the body, and it's about addressing it at that level and helping it to release versus like the old way of like talk therapy being very cognitive and logical and working with reason, which is like more of a top down approach. Somatic is more of like a bottom up approach, really addressing like what's going on in your body and your nervous system, your organs, and helping it to release. And so there's some modalities that I like love more than others, but everybody's different, right? So you always have to play around to see what works for you, because I feel like everybody's like a combination lock and you have to figure out what your combination is, right?
Yeah, I agree, because people that say that one size fits all is definitely not on the right path, I don't think, because each person is different. Each person's trauma is different. They experience it differently.
Yeah.
Their triggers are different. So, to say that one
Yep.
size fits all is, to me, is just not quite being truthful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, like what works for me might not work for you. Some people get a lot out of a top-down approach. I get more out of a bottom-up approach. I'd say like if you've gone to like usually I get people who've gone to therapy for a long time and they're kind of like just hit this plateau. And then they come see me and they're like, oh yeah, all this other stuff. Because they're like got as far as they could get with the talk therapy, and now it was time to like address the level of the body.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So someone who is currently in an abusive relationship, God forbid that they find a way to get out, but what can they use, or how can they use EFT to help calm them, to and help them get themselves a bit more centered so they have the courage to leave?
Oh gosh, it's so hard, right? Because especially if you're living in that situation, you're living in fight or flight.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm just trying to think if I was really back in that situation, would I even listen to someone telling me something, right? Because it's just like a hard place to be.
Mm.
But if they were to just, start tapping on their points in a moment of distress or even rubbing, you can rub them and just breathe. That can help start calming down your nervous system. You can also take your right hand and cup your left armpit, and then just put your left hand over your right shoulder and just kind of sink into that to kind of like hug yourself a little bit and rock, right? Just to kind of bring yourself back into your body, right? Or just like sensing like your body parts, like your toes and your legs. It really just depends. But if someone's in an abusive relationship, self-care is huge. So anything you can do to care for yourself, even if it's like a bath, even if it's going for a walk, just every little thing you can do for yourself will help you feel a little bit better about yourself. So then you can work up the courage to leave the situation or figure out a way to leave the situation. Really depends, right? Like what kind of situation it is too.
Yeah, leaving is always, people often say, why didn't she just leave? But, it's not as easy as what an outsider thinks it is. There's so many factors involved in leaving that relationship. Yeah. It's not just the children, it's more of a mental thing, because, it's just too big to go into. But honestly, yeah, people that just don't understand if they've never been through it.
Yeah, that's why when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, there's so many layers. I was like, how do I answer that? Yeah, there's so many layers to like leaving a situation, and it depends on the situation, and like there's like what kind of situation are we talking about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is just so much into it. Cassandra, where can people find you if they want to work with you or find out more about EFT and somatics?
Oh yeah, I share a lot of somatic tools on my Instagram. So you can find me at C_Love_Lambert. And then also you could always well, actually, Rose, you have a link you can share with them.
I do.
If they want to like do like a discovery call.
Perfect. And your website, what can we find on your website, Cassandra?
Oh yeah, it kind of breaks down some of like the Brainspotting or EFT, and it breaks down the pain into power process. And that's just CassandraLoveLambert.com.
And finally, if you were to offer some advice to somebody, whether they're in a current situation or they've come out the other side, but they're still unsure about, what they can do to break down the trauma responses, what would that be?
Yeah. So coming from me, like I was somebody who was really reactive, and I had a lot of anxiety. I would get panic attacks. I'm also like a highly sensitive person, very empathic, and I never wanted to be on meds because I didn't want to be a vegetable. So if I can regulate my nervous system, I know you can. There's like hope for sure. And I would definitely look at clinical EFT. I would look at breath work. I would look at grounding techniques. I would also look at inner family systems is another really great one. Yeah. And Brainspotting. That's another one. These are like all my little magical things that I found that just really helped me so much.
Wonderful. Cassandra, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to learning a bit more about, your tips and techniques on how we can all become a little bit more grounded and keep ourselves more, safe.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Rose.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.